Hello, I'm Matt McEwen, Solution Architect at Cloud Active, and in this video we're going to look at the way you can change your field labels in Salesforce. So we can change everything that you can see on the screen in front of us. These tabs across the top, these field names here. These are all labels. And changing labels is only dangerous if you are already using email templates with those fields being added in the template as a merge field. If you change the label, those fields will no longer merge. So you may also have to come in and update your email templates. Now the key thing to understand is that there are different types of fields in Salesforce, and when you're changing a field label, you need to know which type of field you're dealing with. Now there are standard fields in Salesforce even before you start. You can add your own fields, of course, and indeed your own objects, and you can change those labels in a different way from the way that we change standard fields. And if you've purchased a managed package off the AppExchange, for example, there are sometimes limits on what you can change, but you can override the label, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. We'll take a bit of a scenic tour here. What I'm going to do is to switch back to Salesforce Classic. When you switch back to Classic, there's an old admin feature here that is kind of useful. I'm going to go back to the Contacts tab, and I'm going to pick up Veronica's Contact tab. You can see here over on the right-hand side, there is what's called the Force menu. And by choosing Visit View Fields, I'm able to navigate directly to the list of contact fields. And the reason we did this is you can see that I've got the standard fields split out separately from the custom fields. The standard fields, if I drill in and have a closer look at them, these are the labels that we've got here, and these are the field names, sometimes called the API names. Certainly when we're talking about custom fields, they've got API names. So you notice that these API names, I'll call them, have capital letters. When there are two words together, there's a second capital letter in the middle of the word. There is no space. Has opted out of email, for example, is the standard API name for that field. So you can quickly identify it as a standard field, whereas when I'm looking at a custom field, I've got a double underscore C notation at the end of the field name, the API name. I've also got underscores representing the spaces, rather than having the spaces crunched as we saw up above. In addition, your Salesforce configuration partner may have also added a shorthand name at the front of the API name so that they can identify the fields that they have created themselves. And if you've got a managed package, you'll have this automatically created here. It's called a namespace, and it's unique across all of Salesforce. This is telling you, for example, that this field was created by Talent Rover. There's a tr1 underscore underscore at the front of all of the fields that were added by that package. So hopefully that was of interest to you. As I mentioned, sometimes use the classic view so that I can see all of the fields that are on an object, and I've got them split out into what are the custom fields and what are the standard fields. If instead I was to look at that here in the Lightning environment, you can see they're all mixed in together. Plus, to see the full list takes a little bit more time because I can only scroll down and it takes time to load. Ideally, you go in and use the quick find, and it'll help you navigate to a particular field if that's what you're doing. All right, so that's why it can be sometimes helpful to flip back to Classic. I'm going to flip back again now to the Lightning environment, and under installed packages link, here is the list of all of the packages that I've got installed here. You'll notice that Talent Rover there has this namespace as we've seen. All right, so if you want to find out which is the package that added the TR1 fields or any of those other fields, this is the list here of the namespaces that are in your org. Now, as I said, it's important to know which type of field you're looking to change the label for, because the process is different for each of these types. Now, if you use Chrome, I've also got a feature. I'm just going to navigate back again. if you use Chrome, I've got a feature here. It's an extension called Show Salesforce API Name. And when I toggle this one on, you can see what it will sometimes do. It's a bit hit and miss, but it'll show me where the API name of the field. So I can quickly identify whether that's a package field, whether it's a standard field, whether it was a field which I've created myself, such as this one, preferred work location. No, it doesn't have a name space at all. I could manually add a namespace if I remember, but if I forget, it'll just look like this. Okay, so first of all, let's say that we want to change our label of a standard field. We're going to go into Setup. We can stay in the environment here on Lightning side, and I'm going to type the word tabs. I'm looking for this one called Rename Tabs and Labels. And this is where I can rename not just the standard tabs, but also the custom tabs. All right, now if you've created an object, you also have to create a tab for it if you want to be able to see it as a tab across the top of your page like this. Or if you want to be able to search for that tab, you're doing this, for example, these are all tabs. All right, if you've created an object, you have to also create a tab for it to turn up on this list. All right, so I can rename my tabs. I can just edit if I wanted to say account wrappers, if I don't want that name, if I wanted to use something else instead, I've got the ability to edit that for both custom and standard tabs. Right. Notice there's an indicator there if the sound begins with a vowel, because it wants to use the right grammar when you do that. All right. If I click into accounts, for example, I can change the name of accounts. Some people do this, they use companies or something like that. And then on the next tab, I can change all of the standard fields that are on my account records. Notice I've also got the option of plurals. I've also got the indicating, it starts with a vowel sound available to me as well here. All right, so if you're changing a standard field, this is the place where you can come and change the label for your standard fields. Rename tabs and labels. Now, if it was a field instead that I have created myself, now let's go back to Veronica's contact record, and let's say that I want to change the name of form preferred work location. All right, now remember, this is a custom field. It's one that I've created myself, so I can edit it right there in the object. What I need to do is to navigate back to the object, go to the field list, find the field I want to change. This one, for example, I can click into here and I can edit this field if I've created it or if one of the local admins has created it. So I can edit that name. As you can see, for Cloud Active, we're adding CA to help us quickly identify the fields that we have added to our clients' orgs. So when I edit this, I'm able to make any change to the field label and even to the field name. All right, now be careful of changing the field names, because if there's an integration that is coming from a third-party system, it might be a form tool, it might be a billing tool, an invoicing capability, something like that. It might be using the API name to identify the company name here in this example, and if you change it, then the integration will break. On the other hand, if you look at the package fields, if I go back to the list of package fields and try to edit one of those, this one here, for example, it's controlled. That little yellow banner there is telling you that there's not much you can do here to change it. And if you try to get in here to change this, you can't. There's no edit you can change. All right. What we need to do with this one instead is to override it. I'm going to go back to Setup Home, and I'm going to type override. And this is a feature of the translation workbench. I'm essentially going to take that value, and every time it occurs, I'm going to write over the top of it. All right, so I'm going to go down to the Talent Rover package. I'm going to tell it that I want to change a custom field. I'm going to tell it that it's going to be on the contact. So here are all the custom fields that are there. And it's a field label that I'm changing. I can also change a related list label. All right, so these are all of the field labels that are in the Talent Rover package that I can override every time I want to see birth date. Let's say instead I want to say date of birth. I'll spell it correctly as well. As soon as I tap out of there, it's shown in red to show that it's not yet saved. And then as soon as I click save, it's now going to change color. And now every time we pull that field, if it's on the page, instead of saying birth date, it's going to say date of birth. Okay, so the trick is actually just being able to navigate through this mostly. There are a number of packages, as we've seen in our installed list, and I can override the fields and other things in each of those. All right, so some of the other things we can change that might be of value to know: the link labels and button labels that came in the package. I can change also the record type naming. All right, so there's a record type there called consulting. We override um, some of those record type names to be temporary. That's on the job record, not on the contact. So here's our record types, and this is where we can change those record types now to say something else: temporary, fixed term contract, whatever is more natural language for each business. Okay. I can also override the description. Here's an important one. You might have seen a moment ago that I had 4 options here um, when I was changing the field label, but one of these, I think it's the 4th one, doesn't have a description value, so I can't override it. There is nothing in the box on description, and I can't put anything there, and therefore I can't even override it. There you go. So to sum up, use your tools to establish what type of field you're relabeling. Make sure that you're not breaking any email merge template field configurations, or else edit your templates. And change the labels in one of those 3 ways. I've added this field to the page now. You can see date of birth is now turning up here. But if I go back and take a look at the page layout, it's still using the old name birth date. Up the top, if I'm using the old page layout, you can see that birth date is still the name of the field, still the label that it knows, but there's just at the last step, as it renders the page, there's an override that's clicking in there. Okay, so be aware then when you go looking for some of those field names, um, for example, when you are looking at the Lightning page layout and want to see a list of the fields that are in your Lightning page layout, and you can search for these here, you can see that this is using the overridden name. Instead, though, in the more classic page layout environment, it's still using the field name rather than the label that I've overridden. Okay, so a couple of little traps there once you do this as well. Have fun with it.